Welcome to the Backseat Leadership Podcast, a leadership conversation for those not in the driver's seat of their organizations. You can learn by visiting www.backseatleader.com. And now, here are the hosts of the Backseat Leadership Podcast, Geoff Kokenauer and Brad Merchant.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Brad Merchant, the co-host of the Backseat Leadership Podcast, here with my buddy
Geoff Kokenauer.
Geoff Kokenauer.
That may be the most formal introduction we've ever had. Ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Just trying to be formal here, Geoff.
Appreciate it.
Geoff, wow, we are so grateful that we have our listeners with us today as we have another great conversation about backseat leadership, a topic that is really pertinent to every backseat leader's life right now as they listen. And it is answering this question: should I stay or should I go? Should I sing the song?
Yes.
I don't think I'm going to. I feel a little nervous and insecure.
Our awesome producer, editor, Stoller, the Stroller, Reinhardt, could
he's gonna
edit in the video or the song right here.
Yeah, with a video on our Instagram page of you dancing to it.
I'm not dancing.
With that app. That'd be awesome.
The app, that's right. The Sway app.
The Sway app.
Perfect.
That'd be awesome. So should I stay or should I go? Geoff, what are we talking about here? This is what we're talking about. The feeling every backseat leader has from time to time where they wonder, should I be doing what I'm doing right now?
Why am I still here?
And yeah, exactly. Should I be doing this somewhere else?
I could be doing it better than them.
Yeah, we're going to get into that. So this is a question that is really important.
Yeah. And Brad, honestly, I mean, this is a season when people start asking that question. You know,
It is.
In April and May and spring when things are new and we could be trying some new things. You know, get some.
That's
vision.
right.
So we're going to have a conversation over the next few weeks, actually, and and I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. So Geoff, why don't you kick us off? As a backseat leader who is listening to this conversation, and maybe right now they're even wrestling with this inner turmoil of, gosh, should I stay where I'm at? Should I go somewhere else? How do I think about this? What would you say to that person?
Well, I think sometimes we just avoid this conversation. Some of us do. Some of us, you know, I think there's two types of people when this comes up. One is they're ready to jump right now. Anything that looks cool, anything that looks new, anything that looks greener on the other side of the fence, get me out of here. Let's go.
Yep.
And then there's the other type of person who is probably so loyal they'll never consider it. They won't even ask the question, right? And so I think one of the things that before we jump into any questions or any topics or any tips or whatever, I think we have to press into that reality. And the reality is this. First of all, there's a balance between jumping quick and staying longer. And this conversation will not end with, you should just stay. It also won't end with, you should definitely go. Because I think oftentimes we don't evaluate it enough to get to the place where we're willing to say with certainty, that makes sense, or that makes sense, or that doesn't make sense, or that doesn't make sense, in order for us to have a good, I think it's a full conversation. I think it's one that we either press into really quickly or we pull away from too much. Yeah. And so I want to lay that bedrock is to say, you gotta at least press into this. You gotta at least, if there's tensions, if there's frustrations, if there's lack of clarity, if there's abuse, if there's things like that going, you gotta press into this, right? You gotta at least ask the question, because sometimes you should stay and sometimes you should go.
Yeah, totally, Geoff. Yeah, and I think this is an opportunity for every backseat leader who's listening now. If you're feeling this inner turmoil, let me encourage you, what Geoff has already said, to interrogate this inner divide.
That's right.
So you have these feelings
really
of,
good.
Gosh, should I say, should I go? Like, interrogate that. The picture is of two detectives walking in a dark room with a criminal in front of them. You're the detective. This inner turmoil is on the other side of the desk. Ask it questions. Why are you feeling this way? What do other people outside of the room think about this?
Yeah.
And that's what we want to do in this conversation, is to help you start doing that with your own soul.
Yeah, that's really good. Brad, you've got a couple questions here that we're just looking at show notes that we've got, and I think they're super great. I'd love for you to flesh these out when it comes to this conversation. Should I stay or should I go? Take us in. Take us through these couple questions really quick.
Yeah, so these are a couple questions as you think about interrogating your own inner turmoil. These are questions I've asked myself. Geoff, we don't want to act like we're exempt forever feeling this.
Oh, no.
We often feel this, don't we, Geoff? We have conversations about this a lot. Should we stay where we're at? Should I go? Hey, there's this opportunity. Hey, I was thinking about this. Hey, someone talked to me about... We had these conversations.
That guy's annoying the crap out of me.
So we are living in this. We understand this. And here's a couple questions, Geoff, that I've tried to just ask myself. There's probably others that would be more helpful, but these are two that have been really helpful to me. The first is this: am I doing my best right now?
That's good.
Okay, am I doing my best? Am I giving it my all? Am I 1 foot in, 1 foot out of my church, organization, my workplace?
Wait, you mean this might be on me?
Crazy. I know, crazy, right? Crazy, right? Geoff, we know this, that sometimes the reason why we feel inner turmoil is because we're actually doing a half-shod job at our job right now.
Yeah.
And we think, if I go to another place, I'd feel better. I'd be more productive. When the reality is, you have a green pasture in front of you that you are not choosing to run in. And so one of the things that I just try to think about for myself is, okay, in the areas of responsibility that I have at my job, am I doing my best in all of them? Am I giving it my all? If I'm not, guess what? Now's probably not the time to go. Now's the time to step up. Now is the time to seize these opportunities that are around me that I've been neglecting or been ignorant of, and to take advantage of them that are right in front of me. I think that's a really important question to answer.
Brad, I think it is. And I think part of the reason it's such a good question to answer is because when we know we're not performing to the level we want to be, or we know we're supposed to be, or we know we could be, that creates insecurities and things inside of us. And so that can only add to, well, it's everybody else's fault. It's the problem. It's the organization, whatever.
Yep.
And so I think it's really, really great to answer that question. One of the things that I really wrestle with, and we've talked about this in previous episodes, one of the ways I think you can assess that is answering this, I suppose, a sub-question. Is this position, is this role still allowing me to fulfill the vision I have developed for my life?
Yep.
Everybody goes through seasons. If you're an accountant in March, you're going through it, But if you're in December, it's maybe not as bad, although that's probably just as bad. There's plenty of things that you can wrestle with ahead of time, so that when you get into the thick of it, you already know what this vision is for what God wants you to be doing. So I think maybe the way to say it is trying to navigate the Holy Spirit in the midst of these things is really, really difficult. So if you're in the midst of asking these questions, should I stay or should I go? It could be more difficult if you don't have this set in place beforehand. So I would encourage our listeners to do that. Ultimately, here's the deal. Your organization has a vision for what they want out of you. My question is, do you have a vision for what they want, for what you want out of your organization?
Yeah.
Like, do you know, okay, here's what I want to try and do in this role. And this is how it fits into the vision that God's intended for my life. So, again, I really think that those are some things that I would encourage our listeners to wrestle through, so that when you get into the thick of asking this question, you're already kind of prepared to do it.
Yep. Great job, Geoff. Good stuff. Yeah, and I think this kind of leads in perfectly to the other question that I think has been helpful for me in thinking about for myself, and it's this: am I a good follower right now? Now, Geoff, I don't want to be redundant, because in episode 2 of this podcast, titled "Lead Well by Following Well," we talked about this. So this is one of our. Oh, it was a great episode. In fact, if you're listening to this episode and you haven't listened to that one, episode 2, go back in the archives. Lead Well by Following Well. We talk a lot about principles on how to do this. But Geoff, you and I know people really well that were really bad followers, still are, And yet they are striving so after being in the front seat of leadership that they're burning bridges all behind them.
Yep.
Geoff, you know what makes a terrible leader? A terrible follower.
Yeah.
And so the question is right now, in your present role, are you following your front seat leader or leaders really well? If you're not, alarm sounding off, siren, hello, watch out. Not a good idea to leave right now. Not a good idea.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point, Brad, because, when you look at the scope of leadership, I mean, whether you've got a front seat leader who's younger, you got a front seat leader who's older, each of them have displayed some level of expertise in the experiences that they've had of following other leaders and creating leaders as they follow leaders that causes whoever is responsible for hiring that position or putting people in that place to put them in that position. So I want to make something quite clear. A good follower isn't just older. A good follower doesn't always have a ton of experience. A good follower may be a younger individual who's just displayed lots of expertise in the experiences that they've developed, and they have. But the best leaders, in my mind, the best leaders, whether they're front seat, back seat, have followed really, really well.
Yeah.
They've been able to adopt a vision from someone else, sort out the things that maybe, I would do it this way or whatever if I was in their seat, and then follow after that leader really, really well.
Yep.
Those things I think are incredibly important to consider. Am I following this leader well? And the reality is Brad, for some of our listeners, I'm not following them well now. And maybe that is an indicator it's time to head out. Yeah. But if it's I'm just not being a good follower, I mean, I think that's an internal question.
It is a different question.
And Brad, some of those things can come from, I'm not being a good follower right now because things have changed in me. One of the questions that I like to wrestle down is does your life still allow for all the things that come with working in the seat you find yourself? People change, guys. People change. Often positions and organizations don't. Oftentimes the seat that you find yourself in is designed for the organization. Sometimes over time those things change, but oftentimes they're set because the organization has decided that's the way it is. Seats on a bus don't change. They're going to be in the spot and they're going to feel the same way they are. Yep. Sometimes they're going to wear out, and they're going to fit the front seat leader's vision oftentimes, So whether they have changed, or you have, it's probably worth asking the question, am I able to still accomplish all the things that this seat of the organization requires?
Yep.
And then maybe there is a conversation with your front seat leader to say, hey, I think that the seat I'm in, either the seat needs to change or the seat location needs to change, or I need to change locations from this bus. Yeah. I think wrestling with all of the things that come in, because there are so many stressors, there are so many tensions that come into a leader's life that can cause them to ask this question, and they need to ascertain whether or not it's because of the season of life they're in. When you start in certain things, maybe you're, single and then you get married, and does the time that the position required, or the position as it was designed when you were single and you could fulfill all those things, no longer able to be fulfilled by you because you're married, or the kids come along, or retirement comes up, or you become an empty nester and it's time to move. So I really think an assessment of your life and your life stage is incredibly important to asking the question, should I stay?
Yeah.
Or should I go?
Yep, it's really good. Geoff, the question for me above all questions here, so if you feel this inner turmoil, man, should I stay or should I go? Yes, interrogate this inner turmoil by asking, am I doing my best right now? Am I a good follower? But maybe most of all, here's the question, really simple one. Am I healthy? Yeah. Am I healthy? Am I a healthy leader? Am I a healthy person? And I want to speak directly to backseat leaders who are serving in ministry right now. Geoff, this is so fresh from my mind in a conversation actually I'd love to talk to you about that I had yesterday with a really wise guy. And he was just talking about the health of pastors in particular, but I think this applies to any ministry leader in any context, that if for you it is easier, he says, to serve the Lord than to seek the Lord, you've made ministry an idol. If it is, so think about that, Geoff. If right now it is easier for you, it's I hit your knee, you boom, your leg jumps up. If it is a reflex for you to serve the Lord quicker than it is for you to seek the Lord, you are not in a healthy spot right now. And wow, what a great question. And so one of the things that I just try to think about for me is my marriage healthy? Am I flourishing in my marriage? Are my wife and I on the same page? Do we feel intimate with one another? For me, because I have a son, am I a good dad? Am I a healthy dad right now? Am I spending undistracted time with my son, investing in him? Then am I a healthy pastor? Am I viewing everybody in my church with a cost-benefit filter over my eyes and evaluating everybody by what I can get out of the relationship rather than what I can give?
Yeah.
If I'm doing that, I'm functioning more like a marketplace carnal CEO than a God-called pastor.
Sure.
So I try to ask that. And then another is, am I a healthy follower of Jesus?
Mm-hmm.
Do I really love Jesus? And I don't mean the ministry of Jesus. Judas loved the ministry of Jesus and betrayed him. Mm-hmm. What I mean is, do I actually love Jesus? Mm-hmm. Do I actually love him? And those are great questions. I think if you're listening to this today, you should ask yourself that. And the one that's just pressed on my mind, if it is easier for you to serve the Lord than to seek the Lord, right now, instead of investing energy in finding another place to go, you should really invest some energy in being a healthy person, a healthy Christian. That's going to make all the difference.
Yeah. Brad, when I first got married, I was reading a book by a guy named Alan Fadling, and it was about Jesus, his life. And he recognized that if you were to boil down Jesus' life to one key word or one principle, he was unhurried. We've talked about this before. I think I even quoted this book before, probably multiple times. It was so revolutionary to me. When I first got married, I had some of those. I was in the midst of this question. I was in the midst of, should I stay or should I go? Given some frustrations and things that I was dealing with. And I kind of walked through some of these questions you're talking about. But the Fadling book, I'm wrestling with getting married and looking for a house and trying to build a life and all these type of things, and trying to do my job well and trying to position myself in such a way that I could be obedient to the Lord if he decided to move me or call me in a different role, whatever it is. But Fadling wrote something to the effect of, and I'm not going to get the quote exactly right, but we in the Western church, and he's talking about, church ministry, like to go from where the grass doesn't seem so green to where the grass looks greener to where the grass looks greener to the grass looks greener, not realizing that I'm not watering the grass right where I'm at. And, sometimes staying healthy means finding a different place. Sometimes that's what it means. Sometimes it means, the setting that I'm in, the role that I'm in, the what it does to my marriage, to my kids, my other things that I'm passionate about or excited about. It's time for me to move on.
Yep.
But I think a lot of times what tends to happen is we forget to forge health where we're at. And so what happens is we mail things in, and we don't forge health. We don't water the grass where we're at. And sometimes that means, putting more restrictions on the time that I give to the job, so I can give more time to other things. But a lot of times, I think what can also cause us to do this is when we're asking this question, should I stay or should I go, too much. One of the things that Fadling quote caused for me was a commitment to not consider job opportunities that would come my way. Emails, people would email me and say, hey, do you know anybody who might be interested in this student ministry job? Or, anybody who might be interested in this position or whatever it may be? I just found myself, I think it was from Jesus, telling me that you need to not consider those things and be where you are. And I think sometimes, when things get difficult, when things get stressed, when there's friction at the job, when life just doesn't feel like we think it should, it's not meeting our expectations, we can ask this question a lot. We can just go to this question, and then we begin to get on the job boards. We get on Indeed.com. We get on, Monster. Is Monster still a thing? I don't even know. We start to find where this next thing may be. And I would just say this. Some of us need to take a pause from even asking this question because we find ourselves asking it way too much. And what it does is it distracts us from forging health where we're at. And the fact of the matter is if you're not healthy where you're at right now, you're not going to be healthy somewhere else. You're unhealthy. You're unhealthy. There's no other way to describe it. If you're not healthy where you're at, just jumping to another job is not going to fix that. If you don't have good disciplines in your life, if you're not protecting your time, if you're not honoring your wife and your kids, and one of the things that's so difficult is that people forget you can find someone else to do your job. Anybody else can do your job. Anybody, you, in your role in your job, whether it's a pastoral role, whether it's a marketplace role, whether it's, driving the bus or running the company, the sales team, you are replaceable. But you are not replaceable in your role as a husband or a wife. You are not replaceable in your role as an aunt or an uncle or a father or a mom. None of those roles are replaceable.
Yeah.
No, but your spouse isn't getting another spouse.
Yeah.
You're it.
I think that, and Geoff, I think what you're citing is Andy Stanley, the poem he had, which I've never forgotten. He said, "Don't trade something unique for you for what one day someone else will do." That's his whole thing. So whatever's unique to you, don't trade that for something that someone else one day will do. Yeah. That's a really good point. Yeah. And Geoff, I think to your point too, I think if you're believing that if I leave and go to another place and I have more authority and I have more influence, listen, more influence only makes you more of what you already are. Okay, so it's the same thing that money does.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Yeah, and it's the same thing money does. People do this all the time with money. If I get more money, then I'm going to be able to. Money only makes you more of who you already are. So if you are someone who, and to go back to this because I think this is really important if you're in ministry, if you are a productivity machine in terms of ministry, programming, I'm discipling people, I'm investing in people, and yet you have no idea how to have a relationship with Jesus. I don't mean that you don't have a relationship with Jesus. I mean you don't know how to do it. Every time you try to interact with him, it feels like an awkward first date.
Yeah.
What does that mean? It means that when you get more influence, more authority, more responsibilities, more people to manage, more things to take care of, it's only going to make that worse, right? And so, Geoff, I think for some of us, what we've been trying to do is rearrange the furniture when really the carpets need a deep clean. That's really what we need. And so I think what we're talking about here is less surface level interrogation, more deep heart level, which just is hard.
Yeah.
Where am I really at? And then wrestling with, okay, if that's where I'm at, what do I need to do? And it probably doesn't mean going. Because we want to go from a place of health, not a place of unhealth.
I agree. Brad, real quick, I've got one more thing I want to throw in here at the end, but I would love to hear, one of the things that we're trying to do on this podcast is just be a little more real and just have some conversations. I'd be curious, when you get to this place where this question becomes nagging, we'll put it that way. We'll say nagging. Right. And you've served in a couple different churches. You've served in, different places. You've had different jobs, that kind of stuff. I've served in 3 churches, as far as my adult life goes and stuff. Sure. Who do you go to? Aside from praying to Jesus, which I think is the most important thing. Go see if any of you lacks wisdom, ask and it'll be given to you without finding fault. Jesus promises to do that in James, so do that. Aside from prayer and aside from spending time with Jesus, which I think we've hammered home pretty well today, what's step number 3 for you? Besides maybe your wife, who's number 3?
Yeah, Geoff, it's fundamentally, how does God change people? I think he does it through his word. I think he does it by his Spirit, which implies prayer. And third, he does it through wise people.
Yeah.
And so who do I go to? Geoff, I always try to have wise people in my life that I'm rubbing shoulders with on a frequent basis. In fact, last week, I kind of reevaluated who are the wise people in my life and how can I schedule time to be more with them so that when these questions arise, it's not me in an echo chamber trying to solve this on my own, because Geoff, our hearts are deceitful.
That's exactly
we
right.
actually don't know ourselves, the Bible says, as well as we think we do.
Sure.
And so I want to be humble enough to admit that. And so what do? I usually, there's a couple confidants that I have that are at my church who are wiser men than me, for sure, who've been around the block way longer than I have. And I talk to them about it and say, hey, I'm thinking about this, wrestle with this. Will you pray for me? And then 2, what do you think about it? And normally they have some helpful feedback. You know, Geoff, I was just sitting as you were sharing all that. I've probably wrestled with this question. I'm going to be really conservative, 100 times. There has only been, no kidding, one time in my life where I've said, I need to leave, and I left.
Mm-hmm.
So that means 99 other times has been, I need to stay where I am.
Right.
That's helpful.
Yeah.
That's helpful, because I think the ratio for us, we tend to think, oh, there's all these opportunities, and maybe I should go, and that's kind of where we lean. And when actually, if it's to my percentage, there's only 1% of the time where you actually should go. The other 99%, there's things going on in your own soul you need to work out.
Yeah. I'd say the same thing. When I wrestle with this question, I turn to individuals who have been where I've been, who know me, who know my personality, who know some of the things I've been through. They're younger guys, they're older guys. There's some women too, not to just be clear, or to be clear, and people who know like my nuance and know the little things that I get excited about and the things I'm not. And like you, I've only served in 3 churches, and I had to be told it's okay to go by people I trust, some of those wise people, in order to make those changes. And I agree with you. And honestly, that leads to kind of like my heart, I suppose, my bottom line, as we talk about, the next few weeks. We really just want to spend some time in a season where I think this question comes up a lot. Should you stay or should you go? Next week or next time we're together, we're going to talk about this idea of, when I'm not in the front seat and I want to be, should I quit and go find the place to do that? What does that look like? We're going to have a conversation with Derry. Here's my bottom line when it comes to this conversation. Stay a little longer. Friction does not always mean failure, and stress doesn't mean it's time to slip out. But so many times, that's just what we do. You need to start to understand that the value and effectiveness of long-term leadership can't be understated, undervalued, or overestimated. There is so much to the value of staying for a long period of time. And I'm not just talking about ministry. I think this is true in the marketplace. You can be a consistent voice in an organization if you stay a little longer. You can be one of those people who can be dependable and can see an organization through, see your teammates through. You can be somebody who is able to have history with an organization. You can understand how the culture has been shaped to where it is now. You have those relationships. And what you do when you weather the storm could be absolutely huge. Plus, there is so much to be learned for yourself in the long term when you stay long term. And so I would just encourage our listeners, it may suck right now, but it may be for a reason. And so stay a little longer and figure out what you want to learn from it, figure out what you want to, what God may be teaching you, and ultimately what you could be doing if you stay a little longer could be multiplied. I mean, we're talking to the nth degree. I mean, you cannot state how much more you can do when you stay and you're a long-term leader in the place that you're working.
Yeah, it's really good, Geoff. This has been such a helpful conversation, even for me personally, to think through, and hopefully for our listeners today as they think through, man, should I stay or should I go? Hopefully there's some nuggets today that you'll be able to chew on this week. Geoff, wow, it has been a joy to talk about this because it is a issue that to me is really specific and pointed in on backseat leadership.
Yeah.
And that's why we're having these conversations.
That's right.
That's the point of the Backseat Leadership Podcast, is to talk about issues and tensions related to leading from the backseat. So thanks so much for taking time to join us today. We'd love to hear from you. You can find us at backseatleader.com. And we're on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. We'd love to hear from you if there's topics that you want us to talk about and to engage with. We'd love to do it. Geoff, any final words for our listeners?
You know what? It's springtime. Get outside and enjoy Jesus.
Go walk around. Amen. Amen. Thanks for listening to the Backseat Leadership Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Backseat Leadership Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, subscribe and leave a review to help other backseat leaders join the conversation. For more information, visit www.backseatleader.com.